Unknowns are in contact with the vital area. Away the Nixie team away. Away the Nixie team away. Set general quarters. Set general quarters. General quarters, on hand, 25 6. General quarters, on hand, 25 6.
And we're live. It's September 12th, the year of our Lord 2018. And tonight, instead of Clint, we have Sean Erebus and myself, BZ, as we tear through the gristle of today's screaming headlines and rip out the sinewy tendons of truth ensconced within, all from the hoary streets of Shatramento Fornicalia, exposing the trembling toadies, the sniveling Japanapes? No, they're jackanapes, damn it! And fripperous fopdoodles, including leftist and progressive brain-housing groups nationally. The effervescent contrarian, Sack Heads Clint, is having another rhinoplasty. Instead, it's the lugubrious Sack Heads SHAUN, co-owner of the entire SHR media enterprise, plus the unrestrained bobosity of Sack Heads BZ, where again we are doubling your late-night conservative talk show pleasure with double the hosts. And we say welcome to you, and you, and you, and you, and even you, and that person over there named you. So welcome to Whiskey Dale. To also, let's see, we have Michael John Pasqua, and we have Beantown Billy in chat, at least on the SHR side. And let's see. Oh, darn it, I haven't gone into...
on YouTube?
Yeah, I haven't gone into YouTube
Can I
yet.
talk?
Yeah. Oh. Sorry.
You know I'm a fucking owner, right? Jesus.
Yeah,
no, I'm just kidding.
No. Did I not give you credit?
We have Jennifer Cold Warrior in chat on the YouTube channel of SHR Media YouTube. Make sure you, if you subscribe, and you subscribe to the one that says on air on the little logo. There's two SHR Medias out there, believe it or not. And
yeah, is that not weird or not?
It wasn't out there prior until we started, and then all of a sudden it showed up, the bastards. But that's neither here nor there. So yeah, make sure you check us out. SHR Media on YouTube. Like, subscribe, and share. We are back on Periscope this evening. We were able to resolve that. That may have been my fault. May have been. And
but listen, can I point out one thing? It is no longer your fault, even if you had to take fault for it. I submit that the fault is not yours, because nothing succeeds like success, nothing exceeds like excess, and you have succeeded because Periscope is up.
Well,
so need you take fault? And I submit, nay, five. No, you need not.
Yeah. Hey, you know what? I'll fucking take it. At this point, I'll take anything I can get. So yeah, I agree. It was not my fault. This one was not my fault.
No, of course not. Let's see. Oh, this is going to be so funny. Okay, now I've got YouTube up, and I see that we have Cold Warrior in there. And let's see. Now, I guess I could slaughter her name by saying Jennifer Hulaver.
I wish somebody else would slaughter her name, because it seems like every time her name needs to get said over the air, it's me, and I end up jacking it all up.
Okay, it says, if you were to just look at this and not know her or anything like that, you could say Hulaver, but
it's wrong.
I will say Walliver.
Ooh.
Being the consummate radio professional that both you and I, as opposed to Sackheads Clint, are. And he's not here, nor is his nose, and so we can say anything about his
anything we want whatsoever.
Anything about him. I got to tell you this. A long time ago in a galaxy far, far away, I once had a dude that was working for me, and his first name, I'll just give you his first name and not his last name, because he knows who he is. And when he was working for me as I was an EVOC supervisor, his name is Craig, and I once gave him an award for the greatest amount of extraneous nose hairs sticking out of his nose. This guy had intakes for nostrils like an A6 intruder, you know. His nose was like the mouth of, guess who?
Me?
No.
Basking shark.
Who's the mouth that roars down in Southern California?
Oh,
good old Mad Maxine.
Yes.
He had two intakes that were like Maxine Waters' mouth. And really, do you know anyone except an egg-eating snake that can open their mouths as large as Maxine Waters? And again, I say to those listening, nay. Fie. I cannot think of anyone who can, because if you don't know it or not, egg-eating snakes can dislocate their jaws,
right,
so that they can extend their jaw out and open in order to consume an egg, which is probably 2 or 3 times the size of their mouth. And it's what happens is before she goes out to speak, she has a professional come dislocate her jaw in order to be able to open up as wide. The only problem with that is it depends upon the local flora and fauna, because if there's, say, a lot of locust in the area or flies, you run a very serious potential problem of having flies and various insects go into your mouth. And so they don't let her out into public too much, but if they do, and she's done that by her professional, what they'll do, because she is, after all, professional grade, and they try to Photoshop it out of the videos. Are you trying not to? You don't believe this or not? Anyway, they have like these screens.
I'm letting you have it, brother.
Okay, thanks. They have these screens that are taped like Elmer's glue into her mouth, so when she opens it up, the screen is there. You can still hear the words that are coming out of my mouth, but the various flies and small animals and children are not sucked up into her intake like an A6 intruder on a bad day. By the way, speaking of which, do you know that what's the standard for basically every carrier cruise? Or it used to be the standard in the 70s. It's not tolerated now, but what they used to tell everybody at the beginning of every carrier cruise on a carrier group is sometime in this we're going to lose at least 1 aircraft and 1 person.
Mm-hmm. That makes sense. I did not know that, but that makes absolute sense.
But here are the seriously concealed statistics from Maxine Waters. They because it's not a required. People are not required, they're not mandated reporters for how many people are killed due to the intake, the mouth intake of Maxine Waters. But my guess would be it's in the low double digits of people who have lost their lives when they've gotten around the intake of Maxine Waters, who may not have been watching what she was doing, and her minders didn't keep people far enough away. But Maxine Waters can be, she's kind of considered like an aircraft carrier group. You know you're going to lose somebody here pretty soon. Something tells me you don't.
I'm not saying you're wrong.
You don't believe me on that.
And I'm not saying this wasn't true. I'm not saying any part of that. All I'm saying is if you wanted to make the comparison to large, you could say he has nostrils as Clint has length in the nose department. And it would have made it much more clear.
Okay.
I definitely would have understood that. But
well, I get if you're sort of a naval guy or an aircraft carrier guy or a guy that digs planes, then you would know about the.
You're all excited now.
The intakes.
Yeah.
Of that.
How are you, sir?
Doing much better than I was yesterday.
Yeah, you sound a lot better. I'm glad you're feeling well.
Thank you very much.
I don't know what it is, but I think I may be coming down with it. So
great.
It's good to know it goes around the studio. It's always a good time.
Well, I did you the solid today by not showing up until a little after 7 o'clock.
Uh-huh.
So that there's very little interchange between you and I, and whatever it is that I may have had, I do not transfer over to you.
I thought you were going to go full Clint on this one.
How's that?
I thought you were going to walk in at like 7:45.
Oh.
Like your pants are on fire.
No. I hate to disabuse you of that, but you're being very kind.
I am being kind.
It would be anywhere from 5 to 8 till 2 or 3 to 8. Or a phone call at 2 to 3 to 8, which would say I'm going to be there about 8:05, 8:10 to 8:15.
This is it's funny.
Don't think that I haven't featured on this show. When that happens, I'll go right to an empty chair.
Oh, yeah. Oh, no. First and foremost, you have to understand, I'm the ex-wife, you're the new wife. You're not telling me anything I don't know.
Okay. Right.
You know what I mean?
You're right.
Like, it's like the event where everybody's there, and it's like, hey, does he still come through about 8:05 some nights? Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. All you have to do is act like you enjoy it. That's the only thing that you have to do is like, no, this is perfect. I love it when he does this, actually. But yeah, I know. I'm being mean to the poor guy. He tries so hard.
He does, and Whiskey Dale hasn't. Whiskey Dale is in the
regular
SHR chat over there, and invariably, this is another reason that I like Whiskey Dale is he is the guy that gave us Clyde the Bobcat over there,
of course.
And so kudos to him for that.
Really, sans camera, and that's my fault right now.
Oh, that's okay. Well, yeah, up in the future, what we plan to do, folks, is we're going to get some more cameras.
Yeah,
we're going to get Clyde Cam back.
Yeah, Clyde Cam back sooner.
And another thing we're going to do is try to get a couple of cameras for looking like maybe down from above, sort of a heaven-like view, because we are just a slice of heaven.
So I'll always have to wear a hat.
This desk. Oh boy! Why do you think I'm wearing a hat?
Always have to wear a hat. Go ahead.
Listen, you've got infinitely more hair.
Then what?
Than
yeah,
me?
from the eyebrows down, it grows like wildfire. Everything up sucks.
How sad is it that when you reach a certain age, you have your hair is spouting? It cannot be stopped in one's ears and one's eyebrows.
Nope, it's horrific as a dude.
You know, it's like I wake up and like at the end of the week, I have to make sure that I trim myself appropriately so that I don't begin appearing like the average Russian admiral. with see the brim of the cap right here if you're watching. By the way, folks, you can watch on YouTube. You can watch
Periscope,
and
Facebook
you can
Live.
Watch on the SHR Media Facebook page.
Absolutely.
And if you're watching right now, you can see on any of those three venues that I'm wearing a baseball cap, a Barrett baseball cap.
Very nice.
And the standard Mark I Model 1 Russian Admiral has eyebrows that extend out at least to the end of my bill.
I knew exactly where you're going with that.
So I say that.
That's why I always wear glasses so you can't tell.
That's right. So go to your favorite search engine. And look at photographs.
You're 100% right.
Of older Russian admirals.
It's almost like they can't get promoted unless their eyebrows are a certain length. Like it somehow leads to intelligence ratings.
Anybody remember Morley Safer?
Yes.
Morley Safer had eyebrows like a Russian admiral.
Yes.
And then there was the guy on 60 Minutes who passed away, who used to do his little bit at the end for 5 minutes. Just a rapscallion kind of guy.
Yep.
Curmudgeonly, very curmudgeonly. I swear to God, he may have had eyebrows that were even longer than the standard Russian admiral.
I think it's funny that you let a razor anywhere near you.
Well, only in this ridge line. Right here. Well, and the ears, for God's sakes. You know, the good Lord said, you shall not have hair growing in your tubular channels up here, except for old BZ.
Well, no, you're not the only one. And
I should not have to.
It's not hearing loss
from in here.
You're being insulated against loud noises naturally. I just want you to know that's the case.
Maybe
hey, look, I mean, look who you're talking to. I can sneeze. I could shave right now, sneeze, hold my nose, and I'd have a beard about your length. It is absolutely ridiculous how fast it grows. This goatee, most people don't realize, when I shaved the beard off the beginning of the summer, I brought the goatee back a couple weeks ago. I've actually shaved it twice. And I've shaved the goatee twice.
All right.
And I can't keep it away. It's actually more work now to shave than to leave it. So now it's going to exist there. I don't know if I can shave it. It's going to be like one of those birthday candles where if you blow it out, it just relights again. I don't think I can keep up with it. And, between that and, I get arms that are essentially sweaters because I grew up in the Northeast, so I don't have to wear a sweater when it's cold outside. It's lovely. Top of my head, nope. Can't do a damn thing with it. There's no help for it whatsoever.
As was told to me many years ago by a person who was bald. He said, all that is your massive amount of intelligence pushing the hair up and out. And because I liked that, I said, yes, that makes an infinite amount of sense to me.
Hey, I'm all for lies. I am all for lies at this point.
Yeah,
so if that works, it works.
He used to say I had a luxuriant thatch of hair.
Oh, well, that is a
there.
lovely, weird way of saying it.
Which, of course, I don't in the slightest. I will say this, though. You and Robin Williams do have something in common.
Hairy arms?
Oh, have you ever seen
Yes.
Robin Williams either without a shirt
Yes.
or like in a short sleeve
yes,
shirt?
it's incredible.
I don't know if this oogies out other women like it oogies out my wife, but my wife can look at a guy who happens to be particularly hirsute, shall we say, and if he has any hair, like anything that you can comb or part.
On other parts of the body other than the head?
Like on the neck and the shoulders, and particularly the back.
Oh, yeah.
To the point now where if I find a photograph of some guy that looks like Neanderthalic, I'll purposely try to print it out and hand it to her. And she's, ew.
When your back hair takes longer to dry than your head hair, it's a problem. How did we get to this?
I don't know.
Hey,
We were constantly
I
devolving.
want to throw a shout out to a different Jen who's also listening. And I just got this info in chat, but she had kidney stone surgery this morning, and tomorrow's her birthday. So happy birthday! Thanks for listening. We hope you feel better. And they're in the path of the hurricane as well, so they get the trifecta. It comes in threes, so hopefully you're good now for like the next couple years. If that's the case, I'm going to be good for the next 20 once the clock ticks to 2019, or the calendar rather. BZ,
Sir.
I know we've been joking the whole time, but we get about 10 minutes left, and I do want to bring up the anniversary of 9/11. Obviously, for those of us who remember it vividly, and I know there are generations now who don't, and I've said this time and again. I know.
Does that not seem just alien to you?
It seems very alien, but it's also like I know you were around both for the JFK assassination and Pearl Harbor,
Right.
and I say
you're right.
I say this is our generation's Pearl Harbor, our generation's JFK, the Gen Xers or whatever they want to call us. This was the moment where we remembered where we were and what we were doing, and I'll forever remember that day and the coming days after that. I was at work a lot, and as were you, and I just remember the horrific feeling of that day and the uncertainty. I was in my prime, stronger than I've ever been in my life, and I remember being scared as an adult for the first time, really. And the days that followed that, the confusion, the anger, the outrage, watching the loss of life just tally up, and hoping for miracles that somewhat didn't come. And in some ways they did come, very much so. And we look to the media, we look to celebrities and a lot of these other people to cheer us up in a lot of ways. And I thought, I don't care what you say about any other part of his politics, I'll have that conversation. I thought the way President Bush handled it and the day of and the days after was extraordinary. We can go into what he did politically after the fact, but I think his handling of the event itself was extraordinary, and I think he was the right man for the job at that time.
He was. Are you in a position that you can go into where you were and what you were doing at the time? Okay, all right. You can give sort of a general
generalization
overview.
I worked a lot. I was held over from a late shift to a day shift. I was sitting with my buddy JP Kelly, and I can remember a friend. We were watching TV, and we had one. We just weren't watching it, and I don't remember what we were doing, but I can remember our friend Trent coming in and saying, hey, turn on the TV. Something hit the Trade Center, And much like everybody else, when he first said it, I thought it was another small plane, like a Cessna or something like that got lost and confused.
Exactly.
Until we turned
it had
on.
happened before. A plane struck the Empire State Building in the 40s.
And after that, too, I think there was another large building in New York that was hit by a small plane. And I think the one that hit the Empire State Building, there was also, was it a Air Force plane? I think there was an Army Air Force plane that hit a building in New York.
It was a pretty large plane.
It was a B-29, I think.
Something large.
Yep. But it wasn't like this.
No.
And I can remember turning it on, and about 10 minutes later, the second plane striking. I can remember thinking, well, I'm not going to leave work anytime soon. And then we watched, and I can remember we watched NBC, because media was different back then. That's the other thing people have to take into account. They had their own swing, whatever. But the people that were reporting on this incident on that day and the days afterwards, Sam Donaldson, even Brokaw, when they had to just be reporters and the people on the ground were just reporters and there was no political spin because nobody was inclined to put a political spin on anything yet. It was all about the incident, the suffering that occurred, who did it, the recovery, the heroes that went in that day into both the Pentagon and the trade centers. And it was about telling their story. And I can remember, watching it, and you never once even thought about politics. And I can remember for the next couple of weeks, never even played in anyone's mind. It didn't matter.
Was so far beyond that, and rightfully so.
Right. So, it was a frightening moment. It was a scary moment. After the fact, I think brought out the best in our country that we hadn't seen in a long time, and I think people have forgotten so much, and we haven't really seen it since, certainly not how we treat one another in this country. But I'll tell you, I know everyone's going to jump down my throat. One of the best, all the late shows, once they started coming back on, which really was the only comedy relief you could find on TV because every other channel was covering the event of that day. And they were covering the attacks, and they were covering it was just a lot of heavy stuff. And when you were trying to get that laugh, which you so needed, you went to a lot of the late shows. You had Letterman, you had Leno, Conan, and they all did a really good job, especially that first time back. And they all gave pretty moving introductions to their show. But I still say, and if you can find it, I know it's out there, Jon Stewart on The Daily Show, who is filming in New York, lives in New York, and is from New York, his first show back after 9/11, I thought was one of the best introductions and explanations to what it's like to be a person and feel the attack. And, he said out of his apartment, he used to see the World Trade Centers. And then after the attack, and he was talking about how much was taken away, but you have to try to find that good. He said, but now I look out my window and I see the Statue of Liberty. And you can't take that away. And that's what he was saying is you can knock down our buildings, you can hurt our people, but you can't take our country away through these actions. And if you ever have a chance, it's all over YouTube. And have a chance, look it up. Forget Jon Stewart when he went political later on in the show. Take it as that moment in time and watch it, because to me that was the most real introduction. It was very, very touching, and it was very comical in a lot of ways. He was very self-deprecating, but he also explained, I think, how a lot of people felt, that scared, unsure way. And I just thought it was incredible. And those guys, whether you like them or not as people or whatever, those next couple weeks after 9/11, including Saturday Night Live, were funny. And maybe it's because we needed the laugh bad.
Oh, did we ever?
That anything that was slightly humorous was extremely funny. But I can remember that was some of the best late night television for a long time. And that was the only comic relief when we were in the middle of the foray, if you will, in the middle of trying to figure out what had just happened with our nation. And we lost so many fellow citizens, and it was just a terrific thing. And, the weeks coming, I'd been down in New York. I'd been right up to the Trade Center. I'd been there when there was still smoke coming out of it. And I was back a few times to attend funerals. So, for me, that made it much more personal. And there was so many great stories that you just don't hear about. And I always say the first anniversary, I remember there was a contingency of 70 police officers who came over from England, paid their own way, took their own time off, but they came over from England to memorialize at the anniversary and pay their respects. And there was so many other stories like that that just don't get told, that get overshadowed with, what it led to afterwards, the politics afterwards and everything like that. But that day, that event, like I said, being 20-something years old and probably in the best shape of my life, no fear in my heart of anything. That was the first time I can remember as an adult actually really being scared. And it, I said, changed the fabric for this nation. Unfortunately, I think too many people have forgotten what happened on that day, and they definitely don't remember it appropriately. It's been politicized since, and it will be forever. And the history is not being taught to our youth. That's the other part of it, too. Many schools are starting to teach this ideal that the 9/11 attackers were somehow like gang members, like MS-13, the Bloods, the Crips. They don't discuss the ideology behind the attack. They don't discuss who the attackers actually were. Certainly not the immigration part of it, how 3 of them were here illegally, like all these different things. So I just... I spent time yesterday and took time to memorialize. I put a lot of things on Facebook, but nothing personal, because I think like a lot of other people, it's still a very, very hard day to relive. And I wasn't in New York when it happened. I was in Boston. I don't want anyone to confuse that, but it was still, just as a citizen, a very, very hard day.
What I would suggest to everybody is there is a massive difference in perception and feeling between the left coast and the east coast.
And when we come back, I'll tell my little personal story of 9/11 and how it affected me. And we were talking about the
politicization of 9/11. We have an audio cut coming up from an individual who spoke at the 9/11 memorial yesterday and happened to mention that. And some people immediately said that just by mentioning politicization, he politicized it. And to those people, I only have 2 words: fuck you.
Yeah, I agree wholeheartedly.
I really do. Except that the impact was felt much more on the East Coast, and the further north you went, obviously, as well. To the point where, let's see, we got about, it's 8:30. I'll make this brief thing, and then we'll cut over to the break. You remember there was one particular judge in New Jersey, I think, and it was early on in the Trump, in his time. He had just gotten installed. He'd just written the executive order, and it was being, there was a lot of pushback from the various judges. And one of them who upheld it was a judge in New Jersey. And I can guarantee you the reason that he did and the other various leftist judges didn't is that because for him it was personal.
Yeah.
And people coming into this country illegally and then conducting themselves in that fashion and killing 3,000 Americans, it wasn't some abstract concept. To him, it absolutely was personal.
Conservative media done right. You're listening to the SHR Media Network.
Hey, it's Sean from the Sack Heads radio show. Also one of the owners here at the SHR Media Network. Are you opinionated? Have you ever wanted to do your own show? Have you ever heard somebody like this
Well, Whiskey Dale will notice that. He will make a definite note of the fact that now you are mimicking Clint.
Why did Clint? Oh, because I hit the table.
Right.
So, but I hit the table intentionally, and it was with rhythm. I just want that to be noted.
Well,
in chat room,
white boy rhythm, maybe. But rhythm. God, who was that guy that did "Hit Me with Your Rhythm Stick"?
All I can think of is Steve Martin and the Jerk.
No. Hit me with your rhythm stick. Hit me. Hit me. Oh, we were talking about 9/11. And I'm going to tell you my 9/11 story because it was so odd and so packed with irony. Because at the time, I was working graveyard for about a 2,500 plus sheriff's department here in California. And I was the comm sergeant at the time. And I was working the S1 console, which is the Sergeant 1 console. And there are two separate rooms at the time. There was a dispatcher's room and a call taker's room. And the S1 console was in the call taker's room. And there are about 12 positions for taking calls. And there are 3 dispatch positions over in this separate area so that the sound between the two is not mixed. And the dispatchers are in their own little soundproof area. So I'm on graveyard. It's towards the end of the shift. And at the S1 position, I get a phone call. Now, I don't get that many phone calls at the S1 position because all the calls for service come to the call takers.
Right.
So anything that comes into the S1 position is going to be a fellow sergeant or an officer who has a major complaint about any of the call takers or the dispatchers, or it's going to be a sergeant, a lieutenant, a captain, or sometimes you'll get the sheriff to call in and say, hey, why didn't X, Y, and Z occur? So if the S1 phone goes off, basically, it's going to be something
the bad phone.
Fairly serious.
It's the bad phone.
So I pick it up, S1, and the person on the other end I will never forget, and to this day I do not know who it was. A male voice just about yelling, not at the top of their yelling with significant volume says, turn on the news, and hung up. Now, why they called me, who it was, to this, as I indicate, to this day, I have no idea who it was.
Right.
Well, in that area, not in the dispatch area, but in the call-taking area, we had monitors like you see in all sorts of bars and restaurants and places today, and the sound is off, but the captioning, the closed captioning is on, and it was on some other channel, and it wasn't on news. So I changed it to news. I don't remember. It might have been CNN, whatever the hell it was. Well, we became transfixed. At the time, the first plane had already hit. So we were watching replay after replay after replay of what was occurring. Right. And all of us in there were absolutely transfixed about this. And I can distinctly remember, though it's early in the morning, the next shift came in. Well, the people that were on Graves, day shift came in. The people that were on Graves, myself included, we all stayed just to watch the TV. And we stayed sufficiently long that the second plane came in and hit. And obviously, once the second plane hits, you know it is a terrorist action.
Yes.
That was the first time in my history in communications where all the 911 phones stopped.
Weird.
And it
You mean nobody needed an ambulance for hangnails, or nobody had a neighbor that was mowing their lawn too early?
That's the one thing that I will never forget about 9/11 is I was in the comm center watching it on TV. And as we had just gotten through, the second plane had hit, and some of the people were starting to go out and go to their homes because they wanted to go home and continue watching.
Right.
The new shift was there. So in the process of going home, because I lived about, at the time, about 90 miles away, because I lived up in still live up in the Sierra Nevada mountains, up Highway 80, and it was literally 90 miles away from work, so it's an hour and a half going home. Both the towers fell as I'm driving home.
Oh, wow.
And so I continuously listened to it. That's how 9/11 affected me. But the thing that I found, in retrospect, of course, but that was the only time in my career where I ever heard the 911 lines
stop.
They just stopped.
Yep. Everything did.
They just stopped.
Everything did. I can remember, and like I said, outside, and I was in Boston, we have Logan Airport, which was the originating point for
for at least two
of the flights.
Two, okay.
But when they put the ground stop on, one of the eeriest things in the world when you live 6 miles from Logan Airport and you're right over the approach pattern, and I think we're under the Logan 4 approach, runway 4 if I remember right, you hear constant air traffic. It's either coming or going, and it's constant. And there's a lot of air traffic over the city of Boston. If you look to the south on certain nights, you can see, from where I grew up, you can see...
Oh, you can see, I bet you can see the planes stacked up in different levels and different altitudes coming in because their landing lights are on.
Yes, and from where I was, from the south approach, coming in over Weymouth, Quincy, and up the shoreline, it was a direct path. So you could literally see the stack. And to have it be dead quiet at night, the trains were shut down, so the train station that was near me was not active. All mass transit was shut down, so every bus was off the road. People were home watching their televisions, and it's that same eerie quiet, with the exception of we had F-15s circling our airspace because they still had planes coming in from Europe that they were worried about.
Right.
So the only thing we would occasionally get is the roar of the two F-15s that would come out, and we were at the outer loop of their circle. And I mean, I don't know exactly, but pretty close. And you would get the Doppler effect. It would show up. You couldn't see them because they were in their tactical mode, so they had no lights going, but you could hear them. Every once in a while, you could see the afterburner. If they turned, if there was something, and it tells you how much they didn't know that night even still is, I heard the afterburner a couple times. So there were planes coming in that were still being watched. And they did. They had a whole bunch of planes, and people forget that too. If you go on YouTube, there's a couple of great, that's just the aircraft audio from that day. And it's the ATC aircraft, military, and it's all of the just audio recordings, and somebody had put them in order, lined them up so the timing is right, and the phone calls made to American Airlines from Betty Young, who is one of the flight attendants on Flight 11, I believe. You can get all that mixed in, and they mass produced it, and it's pretty incredible. It's still to this day I can remember, like you, the weird silence is almost eerie.
Another point, and I'm going to see if I can pull up some of that audio. In the meantime, as I'm trying to do that, today, so many people don't realize what a massive Air Force we once had, because just like you, Sack Heads SHAUN, how frequently is it anymore where we are in Sacramento, California, that you see or hear any military aircraft?
Very rarely. So the only thing around here that you get is the C-5 Galaxies and the C-17s flying into Travis.
Right, and locally around here you get the T-38 the Falcon dudes who fly the TR-2s and whatnot out of Beale. They come in and shoot landings, and then the C-5 people from Travis, they come into Mather and they shoot landings as well.
Right, and you occasionally at Sacramento International you'll get KC-135s. They'll shoot landings and go. If you go out to the western part, occasionally you can catch a glimpse of a U-2 because it goes into Beale. And every once in a great while around here, because of Stockton, you might get a couple of, I think they're 15s or 16s that come up out of there. I'm looking for that audio, and I'll shoot it over to you if you wanted to go ahead with your story.
Okay.
I know you're doing 5 things at once over there. I'm trying to help.
Oh, here we go. Here's September 11th audio of ground control and pilots.
Kennedy Tower reports. Kennedy Tower reports that there was fire at the World Trade Center, and that's the area where we lost the airplane.
You see, is he descending for the building also?
He's descending really quick too. Yeah.
Well, that's
2,500 feet now. He just dropped 800 feet in like one sweep.
that's another situation.
Another one just hit the building.
Wow. Wow, that one hit hard. Another one just hit the World Trade.
The whole building just came apart.
Holy smokes. All right, I guess you guys can be ready.
That aircraft is down. He's at our 12 o'clock position. Looks like it's just to the northwest of the airfield at this time, sir.
Go for 86, thank you. Descend and maintain 2,000.
Okay, we're down to 2,000. And this is go for 06. It looks like that aircraft crashed into the Pentagon, sir. Okay, there is now on the United 93.
Yes.
There is a report of black smoke in the last position I gave you. 15 miles south of Johnstown.
From the airplane or from the ground?
They're speculating it's from the aircraft.
Yeah, that was Shanksville.
Yep.
If I'm not mistaken. Anyway, there's tons more. If you go on YouTube and whatnot, there's tons more audio.
And I'll put the
came
one
from.
I actually found it. Actually, Rutgers put it together. I'll put it on the SHR Media Facebook page really quick. You know, it tells you, and one of the things that people I don't think understand is the amount of chaos that went on that day and the amount of unknowns, and as much as we were prepared as a nation, how much we were not prepared, and how we didn't have a contingency plan because nobody ever thought this would happen.
Well, go back to 1993 and the original World Trade Center bombing. We had no idea about the concept of building security, that people would attempt to do this.
Right, and it was amazing because you also have to remember, when was Oklahoma City? 91?
91, 92.
Yeah, so we should have learned a little bit from Oklahoma City. But we wrote that off as a isolated incident. You had the 93 bombings of the World Trade Center. This was different, though, because this was something that not only did they utilize civilian aircraft as missiles, but on top of not knowing how the hell to even deal with that, what we didn't know is if they took cargo planes and loaded them full of jet fuel and did the same thing, it would have been dramatically different. Because when you listen to the tapes that I'm posting on SHR Media Facebook, and the thing that I want you to remember is when they're trying to decide to scramble the first set of fighters out of Otis, and it came a pretty quick decision. People always say that they waited too long. The decision was pretty quick. Once people realized something was off, which the air traffic controllers were the first ones to pick up on it, then things started to move. And I can remember, I think the guy's name was Dan Bono or Buono out of Boston Air Traffic Control, and he was the first one to say, hey, we absolutely need to get military out. And then they start making the call down to, I think it's, I know it's Otis. And they said, hey, we got to scramble fighter jets or something. Here's what's going on. And the guy who answered the phone was like, is this real time or is this an exercise? He's like, no, this is real.
I remember that, yes.
And he's kind of like, well, he's like, you need to find me somebody that can give authorization right now. Like, all of a sudden it was real. But then, even then, there was no plans once the fighters got to a jet. Like, say they caught up to 93 or they caught up to 77 or whichever one. There was no plan for what to do with it. It became that first question of, do we shoot a civilian airliner filled with American citizens out of the sky, hoping that it's the right thing to do? Or do we just let it happen and then suffer the fallout afterwards? And you have to understand, this isn't a political decision. This is being made by the military who are alive and overseeing it. And I don't know at what point, I'm sure a general or somebody was called, but that's a middle manager, a lieutenant, a major, a captain who had to make that call pretty quick. Like, all right, as of right now, here's what we're going to do. You can hear the scramble. They didn't know where they were sending them. That was amazing. And not because, you have to understand, airplanes have what's called transponders. And when you're going to take off in a commercial aircraft, you turn your transponder to a certain channel, and that lets the radar see you. Other than that, you're going just basic target-based radar, which doesn't give you altitude. It's not as accurate. It can be delayed depending on how quick the waves go out and come back, etc. These guys all shut off their transponders. They had enough training to be able to take the plane over, fly the plane where they wanted to go, navigate enough to shut off transponders. So they didn't know what altitude. Well, never mind trying to find anything latitude and longitude wise, but you're now looking from 0 feet to 45,000 feet as well. And you're looking for what's a speck. You know, maybe you'll get contrails if the weather's right or whatever, but you're looking for that speck. So they're like, well, send them to Manhattan. Well, if they're already over Manhattan and the plane's coming in at 550 miles an hour, are they going to have time to engage? That was one of the conversations that was going on. Like all these different things. That audio tape was a very, very different view of that day based on the Nadeau brothers who did the documentary with the fire department. It was an amazing documentary.
You mentioned, either you mentioned that or someone else mentioned that on Facebook yesterday.
I think you posted it, but I've always posted about that. I've watched that a million times.
The documentary about the two French brothers that are covering, weren't they covering the fire departments?
They were following a rookie from his first day in the academy all the way through his probationary period. And it was a brainchild of one of the fellow firefighters who thought that it was a story that needed to be told. They got the clearance, and they just happened to be riding with Ladder 1 and Battalion 1 that day. And Battalion 1 is Chief Pfeiffer, who was the first chief who just retired, I think, last year. He was the first chief through the door. They're the ones that saw it. He was the first person to call it in. They were standing out in a call when the plane went overhead. That imagery is spellbinding.
That's of all the things and the points that they made in that documentary, that one of the cameramen was on a corner and was tilting the camera up because I think they first heard sound. They weren't quite sure where the sound was emanating from, but the camera frame just happens to catch that first aircraft hitting the first tower.
And that was American Flight 11.
How would you ever get that? And yet these documentarians, these filmmakers, captured that moment, that specific moment.
And they were friends with that firefighter Jacques and Yves, I believe, Nadeau. They were young guys. One of them had never really worked a camera before. He was always behind the camera. The other one was the cameraman. And they both worked through the entirety of that, running their cameras. I think it was the older brother who was assigned to Chief Pfeiffer, or rode with Chief Pfeiffer on that call, who followed him into the building, into One World Trade, was there for the collapse when Tower 2 went down first, because people forget that.
It was kind of a reverse order.
Right. And then afterwards, he was with them for a long time afterwards. And as you get caught into the story, into the reality of the Trade Center attack and the towers coming down, you forget until you really start paying attention that one brother is filming thinking that the other brother is dead, and they both thought that.
Yes.
And it wasn't until hours later that they both were at the firehouse did they realize that each other was alive. And that moment was an insanely touching moment, kind of built into this overall touching moment. The time later in that show when they're back at the firehouse and guys are starting to come back, and they realize that they were lucky in the sense that people were in the right place and they didn't lose anyone from their firehouse specifically. And that's not to say that 343 other firefighters didn't perish, but that specific firehouse, they were lucky. And to watch all of those firefighters come back and the realization that guys were coming back, and it was horrific, but they had each other, so to speak.
Right.
You had the old retired chief who just showed up, grabbed the rookie firefighter, said, "This is what you need, let's go." And he was in a uniform, which I thought was the most amazing thing in the world. Like, he still had his uniform at home, and he was like,
dude, he was ready.
It's time to go. You know, and so that documentary is amazing. The air traffic control audio, the recordings, it's about an hour and a half long. They edited it out, just a lot of the space. Is amazing at well, because you realize that nobody knew, even when something was going on, what the hell to do. And they figured it out pretty quickly. They had protocols, but not for this. And then the realization of, hey, this is another hijack. Hey, this is another hijack. People forget we hadn't had a hijack since the late 70s, early 80s at the latest.
Oh, I can clearly remember the continuous hijackings that were occurring all around the globe in the 1970s.
And then it died.
And then that was when the Red Army faction was alive. That's when the Baader-Meinhof gang was alive.
All of those guys.
It was over everywhere. But do you want to hear something weird?
What's that?
And not too many people realize this. Tom Clancy, who passed away probably 10 years ago or so, the very first book that he wrote was The Hunt for Red October.
Yes.
And it was published by this little winky publishing group that generally publishes just small military historical tomes. It was called the Naval Institute Press. And they took a chance on this guy.
They literally would have published what Jack Ryan would have wrote.
Yep, pretty much. Yeah. And they published The Hunt for Red October. They had no idea what kind of a hot author they had on their hands. Tom Clancy subsequently published a ton of books, intricate detail, great author. In 1994, he wrote a book called Debt of Honor. And in this book, terrorists get a hold of a 747 and run it into the U.S. Capitol building. And everything stops, everything crashes, the stock market tanks, etc. So even back in 1994,
the idea was there.
The idea was present in a mainstream major book.
Well, and I'm sure it wasn't intelligence, too. Look, I'm not saying that. When I say that we weren't prepared, that doesn't mean that people weren't throwing it out there as a possibility. However, decision makers were like, I don't know if we really need to worry about that. I know we have a couple minutes left, and for me, again, I've had the fortune of meeting some of the heroes who responded to 9/11 in New York and in the Pentagon, shaking hands. I've had the heart-breaking opportunity to meet people that lost loved ones in the attacks. And it'll forever be a moment that's near and dear to my heart. It's forever a moment I think we should never forget, and it's forever a moment with the victims and those suffering to this day of the different cancers and illnesses that they got while they were working down there. That's a totally different animal. But I definitely never want to forget them, and I want to thank them all for their sacrifice, both the day of and the suffering that's happened since. I want to mention Tom Clancy as well for a second, if that's okay. I'm going to change gears.
Sure.
I'm going to change gears totally before break.
I still have a 9/11 audio cut that I want to play.
And we can do it absolutely after the break.
Sure.
But I need a little levity, so I'm going to throw it in there. The new Jack Ryan series is out on Amazon.
Okay, I've heard two opinions on that.
John Krasinski.
Some people have said, it's not exactly what I was hoping.
It's a modernized version of Jack Ryan. It is definitely a different version. It's not Harrison Ford's version. It's not Alec Baldwin's version. It's not Ben Affleck's version. It's more of a modernized kind of version. Same story, same backstory, so to speak.
But see, he was the guy that was also in the movie 13 Hours of Benghazi.
Yes.
So he's done this before.
I think he's exceptional. And he starts off as an analyst who gets kind of brought in, because they're all officers. Everyone who works there has a certain minimal amount of training.
That's what happened in the Tom Clancy novels.
But he starts off as an analyst, and then he gets drawn in. They do some things that are different with Admiral Greer that I know a lot of people are upset about, but I can see why they did that to exacerbate the story a little bit.
Well, it's like Game of Thrones. The televised Game of Thrones is not like the books all the way.
In Admiral Greer, in this series, they have him as a Muslim. But he's not a practicing Muslim at the beginning, but he is still, when it comes time to hunt the terrorist, he's brutal. He's absolutely brutal. And he's a younger Greer. He's an active Greer. He's only a station chief. He's not the director and stuff like that later on. The guy who plays him is incredible. I forget his name. He's been in a bunch of stuff. Krasinski, though, I think does an exceptional job. I thought the first season was great. There's always going to be people who said, well,
the first season is over?
Well, they release it all at once. It came out last week.
That's right. It's
so
Amazon.
I'm telling you right now, it's only 8 episodes. Totally worth it. I thought they did a very good job. I was and I won't ruin it for you, but when you watch it, tell me, because I'm going to tell you why I thought they were going to do a Dr. Moriarty type thing with it. But I thought it was great. I thought they did a really good job, and I thought Krasinski was incredible.
Folks, that's it for the first hour here of the Sack Heads Against Tyranny.
Gone like that.
Gone like that. We're going to hit a break, and we'll be right back. And then we're going to have an audio cut about 9/11, and unfortunately about the politicization of 9/11. So don't go away.
Conservative media done right. You're listening to the SHR Media Network.
Hey, it's Sean from the Sack Heads Radio Show. Also one of the owners.
Like a poltergeisty thing.
Sack Heads against tyranny.
You're listening to the SHR Media Network.
Well, it's the second hour already in the Chat Show. Sack Heads Against Tyranny. And if you're watching on Facebook or YouTube or Periscope, that's me right here, BZ, on the left. And over that way, right over there, as you watch my phalange, that is Sack Heads SHAUN, in lieu of Sackhead the Contrarian, Sackheads Clint. We're talking over the break about...
I'm going to get so much shit for the dancing, too, by the way, but go ahead.
No, you won't. No.
I guarantee you.
No, you won't.
No, I'll get it tomorrow. I'll get text messages like crazy.
Over the break, we were talking about... God, there's some great episodic... There is fabulous episodic television on right now. Let me throw this out there to you, Sackhead Sean. I would submit that the quality of episodic television is so good these days, and there are so many selections to make. At last count, my understanding was there are up to 450 current episodic shows that are available on all these channels, Amazon, Netflix, etc., etc. And we were talking about some of the ones that we like on the break. Now, you mentioned Man in the High Castle.
Yes.
And that's on Amazon, right?
Yes.
Okay, now what's that about? Because you keep telling me, and I keep telling myself, damn, I got to watch this.
Obviously, it's based on a book. We've talked about it a million times.
It's a Philip K. Dick book, who was a crazy-ass science fiction author.
Right.
I mean, the dude literally was crazy.
And Google him, or we'll do a bio on him some night. However, you need to understand the Man in the High Castle. It is a world at World War II we lost. That is the setup for the show. It's set in the 60s.
Which is incredibly intriguing in and of itself.
Half the country, essentially from the Rockies to the east, is run by the Nazis. There's a neutral zone that's between that and the West Coast, which is run by the Japanese. The neutral zone is kind of a no man's land, lawless. Nobody really goes there except for people that want to escape both. And the whole show is a resistance against both the Nazis and the Japanese Empire, who circles around a guy who keeps producing movies of the alternate future in which America won World War II, and keeps releasing them publicly. Hitler's obsessed with them because he knows there's a sense of realism, or he believes there's a sense of realism, and that time shifts and paradigms can change if certain things happen. The Japanese are kind of in denial about it, except for a certain few people who are actually okay with it occurring and are trying to find the good in it. And there's so many internal politics, so many side stories, there's so many factions. Season 1 it's the first 2 or 3 shows were a little slow. It was definitely a hard storyline to base. After that, it takes off. And the guy who plays the head Nazi, who's actually an American who fought in World War II for the Americans and then enlisted in the Nazis, and he's the highest ranking Nazi in America.
Wow.
Obergruppenführer John Smith. If you've ever wanted to hate a living human being so much, oh my God. The guy who plays him is fantastic. And I've seen the guy interviewed afterwards, and I stopped watching interviews because he's such a nice guy, and he hates the character he plays. He hates he likes playing him, but he hates the person that he plays so much. And I stopped watching his interviews because I didn't want it to offset who the character was.
You want to continue to hate him.
I do want to continue to hate him. But they fuck with you because there's a couple of episodes where you start feeling sympathetic for him, not because of his Nazi activities, but what's going on in his personal life. And then you get mad at yourself because you're like, why do I even give a fuck? He deserves everything he gets.
But see, that's the component of engaging television.
Yes.
Is that it drags you, whether you want to go there or not, it drags you kicking and screaming over to this massive bastion of emotions, and it's raking you over the coals emotionally, and really that's the indicator of a good show.
Well, and that's just one character. You then have the Japanese secret police, the chief of that, who they're what Shinsho, I forget how they pronounce it. Then you have the faction, the uprisal, if you will, the rebels, and there are guys in there that you don't like. You start getting caught up into this and that, and the first season, the Japanese and the Nazis don't really cross over. They don't deal much with each other. Then the second season, you start realizing there's all these back channels that are going on. And that is, if that's not enough, you end up going over into Germany, into Berlin, and then you get caught in the Nazi hierarchy and all the internal feuding that's going on there with a sick Adolf Hitler who's still alive and in charge. It is so...
I'm sure there's got to be a massive power struggle that's going on where when this dude cacks...
And you don't think it ends up being...
Who's going to be the new Hitler when Hitler goes away?
Right. And it ends up being crazy because there's definitely the factions of the people like, all right, Hitler's dead. We never really kind of agreed with what he did, so we're going to try to roll it. And then you have the other people like, oh, no, this is the Third Reich. This is the 1,000-year Reich. Everything he did is perfect, and we want to assume that power. It starts driving you crazy because you hate everybody equally, and then somebody will do something good, and you're like, oh, then you have that. Fuck, now I hate him again, right? It is insane when I don't get emotional in shows, right? I can sit and watch an entire series of a great show, and if it's funny, I'll laugh occasionally and be like, oh, that was interesting. This is one of those shows where I've yelled at the television.
Hey, you wrestler friend.
You son of a bitch. I've said that probably 50 times watching this show.
There's another show that I heartily recommend. You must have hit it against something. Mm-hmm. Okay, of course. Another show that I heartily recommend, which I think it was only 10 episodes. No, it was, of all the crazy-ass things, it was 9 damn episodes. Where the hell do you get 9 damn episodes? Anyway, it was Yellowstone, and it was starring Kevin Costner, and, God, the guy that plays Rip is kind of a B-type character, only now he's, Cole Hauser.
I know who Cole Hauser is.
Plays Rip, and he's great. And then Kevin Costner is sort of a guy that has owned 100,000 acres in Wyoming for years. It's been in his family for generations. And he's trying his best to hold on to this ranch. And there are numerous factions, an Indian reservation, people that want to come in and develop, people inside his county, people inside the state of Wyoming that want to see him fall. In the very first episode, he has 3 sons. One of them gets shot and killed. It's an incredible, but there are some shows that treat the viewer like an adult.
Yes.
And this show treats you like an adult.
Yes.
And that's all about writing. Mm-hmm. Writers and director. I mean, this is the perfect combination of writers, characters, incredible casting, script writing, photography. It treats the viewer like an adult and not a kid because there are many adult themes in this.
Right.
I love the hell out of that series, and it's gone already.
And it's got Costner, and like I said, I think Costner's an amazing actor. He's made some shitty movies, but as an actor, he's amazing. So, that's on my list. And so we've gotten to the serious shows. If you want a good fluff laugh show, Magic for Humans on Netflix.
Oh, I have seen that now.
Unbelievable.
My wife hates that show because her brother is a magician. And she associates magic with a brother that has not treated her very well over the years. But I came across that. I saw
Unbelievable.
That. Magic for Humans. I can't think of the guy's name. But I after the first episode, I went, this is really good.
It really was good.
And
the first episode's the kid with the marshmallows. Yeah, I was rolling. I was absolutely rolling.
I tried to get her interested in this. I said, I saw this thing on Netflix, and you gotta watch it with me. Really, what's it about? And I knew
it would get sunk right away.
Yeah. Well, it involves a magician. No, I don't want to watch it.
And it was actually sent to me today. I was told today for the first time about it. And I was told, watch it till at least the marshmallow bit and you'll be hooked. And when I watched through the marshmallow bit, I was like, all right, can't turn it off now. Here we go. And it was amazing. I thought there was a couple times where I thought he was going to get his ass kicked, to be completely honest.
Because when you walk up to people and people these days and people
pull a trick on them,
they don't know who you are.
Yes.
And out of nowhere, you're surrounded by cameras or people, and they want you to engage with them, especially depending on what kind of a big city you're in.
Yeah, and they're down. They must be down in. If I would have to guess, I would say they're down in Southern California
somewhere. Yeah.
But it is an incredible show. If you want to laugh, you can watch it with the kids. You can watch it in public. You can watch it with friends. Trying to figure out how he was doing half that stuff, and he does a good job of magic, comedy, and storytelling. And it's Josh Winson or something like that is the guy's name, but. Definitely check it out. I saw it for the first time today. It was a good laugh. Definitely a good laugh and you need that sometime.
Here's another one that I almost guarantee that nobody else is. Yeah, we're going into stuff that isn't political, but what the hell? It's our damn show.
Right.
We do
well, and we're
want
you know what? This is definitely like pop culture. We're talking about pop culture.
Yeah, that's true. Here's another one that I'm going to throw out for you that I bet almost no one has seen. It's from Southern California. It's on Netflix, and it's called Shot in the Dark.
Have not.
And you may think, okay, murder mystery, cop thing. Well, yeah, it is kind of cops, but it's also emergency response. It follows 3 or 4 teams of stringers whose job it is at night on graveyard to go from scene to scene to scene to try to capture video footage of whatever terrible, reprehensible crap is going on.
No kidding.
In the Los Angeles area.
Shot in the dark.
Shot in the dark. And these guys they work either individually or they work for corporations, and they're all driving cop cars that look like cop cars. They're all driving Dodge Chargers or Crown Victorias. Their cars all have as much crap in them
as cars.
Actual cop cars. Many of them know all the firemen, all the emergency responders, a lot of the deputies, a lot of the officers in Los Angeles, or they're hated by all of those individuals. And it's the clash of egos. It's the clash of one-upsmanship. It's the clash of, can I get there first before the next guy? Can I screw this guy over? How badly do I want to screw him over? Or do I even screw him over at all because I got screwed by this guy last time? I'm changing. It's just, it's very little. I really haven't heard anybody mention it.
That's awesome.
But
I have not heard of it. I got to check it out.
But it was great.
So, and I'm naturally anti, not virtual reality, anti-reality TV on most cases because I get
there are a couple
because I get aggravated.
I watch.
But there's a few that I'll be able to watch and not get aggravated with. I just hate the ones that people make themselves look like idiots. Essentially, but there's a few I will watch, but I'll definitely check that one out too.
This is, I believe it's real because you can't stage the shit that they go to.
No, I'm sure it's real. I'm sure it's like a cops type setup where they're following these guys through their event to chase these things around.
And I want to tell you, some of these people are cutthroat.
Oh, I have no doubt.
God, they are cutthroat.
That's their money. That is their money,
and that's exactly what.
And it's not like a 9-to-5 job where you're getting the same salary at the end of the week. You don't get the shot. You don't get paid.
No, you don't.
And these guys are all doing everything they can to get that shot because they need it.
And there are guys that will make deals with the various TV stations. I give you one, I'll give you another one. Mm-hmm. If I get it in before this guy, you'll give me the next one, won't you? It's just.
Oh, yeah.
There's knives and blood and backstabbing. Oh, my God.
And so there's another reality show that I've watched a few times, and Jennifer put it in the chat room, and I have to agree. Live PD, Which
some of the people have mentioned Live PD. Matthew Betley, who's an author that I've had on the show twice, loves Live PD.
Yes.
And he's a tweeting motherfucker during Live PD.
Yeah, and a lot of people do. I haven't got into that side of it. I've watched a few episodes, but it's pretty well done, actually. And I mean, I don't know how much of it is live at the moment and how much of it was just freshly recorded, but the show is run live on TV. And a lot of the interactions with the police officers are live feeds that are coming in. So essentially the people at the control desk are watching, like they have like 15 different departments embedded. And they're like, all right, this guy's going to this call. Let's go to his feed right now. This guy's going to this call. Let's go to...
Can you imagine being a director of that show?
No, there's too much good stuff. But I'm also a sick bastard. So
okay,
what most other people would want to see?
I wonder where that's leading.
No, I'm just saying, where most other people want to see, like the foot pursuit, like the jumping over fences in the cars, right?
Right.
I'd be like, no. Go to the lunatic who's talking to the pile of grapes, and we're gonna stay on him for an hour because that shit's gonna be awesome. You don't want to know what he's gonna come up with, but we're gonna deal with that. We'll replay the foot pursuit. We'll replace the car chase. What's gonna come out of his mouth? Fucking gold, and we all know it.
That's true. Nothing beats a good nonviolent crazy.
A mentor of mine, John Amaral, used to tell me that all the time. He said, kid, when you're dealing with...
kid.
Yeah. When you're dealing with the crazy people, you have to realize that you have the ones who absolutely are violent and need to be dealt with. But the ones who aren't, talk to them. Spend a little bit of time.
I used to love to do that.
Enjoy it. Because, and he'd say, he's like, some of them are amazing people who are just a little off kilter. And every once in a while, you'll have a normal conversation. And then all of a sudden, the off kilter will come out and you'll be like, well, what the hell just happened?
There was a guy in my district, but since we're going stream of consciousness tonight, there was a guy in my district, in District 4. And I came across him a couple of times. He used to walk up and down Marconi late at night. I was working swing shifts at the time. Big, tall dude, like 6'4", 6'5". Very imposing, as a matter of fact. But he had a hat, a ball cap on, and under this was a carefully crafted tinfoil. Literally, you call a tinfoil hat wearer. This guy had crafted tinfoil all over his brain, down his sideburns, up over his ears, and down to the back of his skull. And it was foil carefully crafted and then crinkled down so it was flat over his head.
It was a skull cap.
Yes, it was. It was literally a skull cap of tinfoil, which he told me
it keeps the rays out.
It kept the rays and it kept him sane. And he always kept a little water bottle with him. And he said it was in case he came across wildfires. After a while, I got a pretty good relationship with him, and I started to call him Captain Cosmos. And Captain Cosmos would go out on the most weird tangents to the point where people would call. I'd get a complaint about Captain Cosmos. I'd run him before. He'd been arrested for murder in Los Angeles, and it was like 20 years prior to the time.
Holy moly.
So here's a murderer that I'm talking to that's a nut that I've only gotten calls on him because they just don't like him because he's big and imposing and he's talking to himself. But Captain Cosmos and I would have the most riotous conversations, whereas today with all the technology that oh my God, if I could have recorded a fraction of the conversations I had with this loony mind, he was just funny as hell.
Mm-hmm.
And I have no problem whatsoever pointing fun at guys like him because they really are amusing. But it's just interesting where the human mind goes.
Yeah, my favorite is when you talk to somebody, like I said, for an extended period of time and everything's normal, and then all of a sudden they're like, well, that's why dolphins are going to take over the planet, and then they brush past it like it was the most normal statement in the world.
Yeah.
And you're like, well, hold on a second. I need to back this train up a little bit.
Yeah, and then you
go to the dolphins part.
Yeah, then you engage him in that particular intersection. Now you've got his attention.
Yes, and they are engaged, and they realize you want to engage them for it, and that's the subject that most people don't want to talk to them about. And now you've asked.
Yeah.
Oh, what it'll open up. Oh, what a bevy of information that'll come out of there.
It can be amusing. Oh, the cop stories I have. Oh, my God.
I want to get back to TV shows, though, because we might as well do the whole segment on TV shows, right? going back, classic TV shows that you're watching. What do you got right now?
Well, here's the funny thing. I just got our hopper. We have Dish. We just got our hopper.
The hopper.
Up the hopper.
It's the hopper. Say it right. I don't say it at all.
Yeah,
it's
it's
the
true. We
hopper.
got the hopper. So we got the hopper 3 now.
Oh, number 3.
Hopper 2.
Hopper tree.
And now we can record. The
Say
guy
it right.
said,
Hopper tree.
Hopper tree.
There you go.
Yesterday, we got that thing. And the guy said, and I had a whole bunch of shows recorded. And I said, God, before I lose all of these things, because every episode of Deadliest Catch this season that I haven't watched yet, Deadliest Catch is my favorite reality show.
Okay.
Why am I talking and I'm not on the main screen? It's because I'm not paying attention.
No, you're supposed to be producing this.
Yeah, I know. It's not your fault. It's all mine. But Deadliest Catch, I said, is there any way that you can transfer this stuff from the old hopper to the new hopper tree? And he says, yeah, I can do that. It's going to take 2 days, but I can do that. So I didn't lose all my shows. I still love Deadliest Catch. Deadliest Catch is on 5 months a year. It's still engaging because there's all sorts of crap that's happening in that industry, and I still find it fascinating that these guys do this kind of crap.
The risk of it all is
live under these onerous, staggering regulations. There's a guy who had his engine had water in it. These are diesel engines, Captain Bill.
Water no good.
And he spent like a week in port while everybody else is out in the Bering Sea. And just for kind of a tune-up to replace a few parts, $50,000.
Yep.
You know, the guys on the Time Bandit, they had to go through their ship, and they spent like $1.2 million to keep their 108-foot or 115-foot boat
running,
up to date, running,
overhaul,
new paint,
keeled.
Some engines in, new engines. They had to cut holes in the hull. I mean, it's high gain, right? Because you can make, you know, in 5 or 6 days, depending on, you know, whether they're going out for bear dye crab or opilio or red or any of the other various crabs that they allow a season for, I don't know, 10 days, 7 days, something like that, you can get $20,000, $25,000, $30,000. Now, it's not like the Derby days when you could have guys in the 70s and 80s that would come back and they would have, you'd have a 17-year-old making $150,000 back in 1970.
Yeah.
Yeah, there weren't drugs or dope or any of that kind of stuff
God,
going
no.
on at the
No.
time. Jesus.
One thing a 17-year-old needs is $150K in the 1970s.
Yeah.
Which right now, honestly, would probably be like...
And it's like $500K.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, like $500,000.
Yeah.
Because you know a 17-year-old is going to make great decisions when they're hanging around with $500,000.
I don't know of a 40-year-old that would make great decisions.
Can you imagine like a 20-year-old NFL star with that amount, you know, making like $500 million in his first year? Yeah, that'll work. That's going to end up well.
Dude, you could... I'm not going to lie.
Speaking of that, here's another series that I liked. Have you ever heard of Ballers?
I have heard of Ballers. I know some people have watched it and said it was amazing.
It's a half-hour episode, and I kind of don't like the thug life that this portrays, but I thought, okay, I like The Rock. I like Dwayne Johnson. I'll give it a chance. And I, even though it had The Rock, I kind of wanted to dislike it.
Right.
But once I started on that thing, I like Ballers. Ballers is, I've
heard really good things. So to get back to my original question, which you obviously don't want to answer, what old shows are you watching? So you must be watching like, what's it, Periwinkle Junction or what?
Are you talking about new shows or old shows?
No, I was talking about, we started with new shows and I thought we were going to get a couple classics out before the break, but obviously not.
On Netflix, there's Ozark.
Okay.
They're open in their 2nd season now.
Mm-hmm.
The Shannara Chronicles is kind of fantasy kind of stuff, but I like that because I'm a Game of Thrones guy and I like George R.R. Martin.
And you look like him, which is even better. If we get you the right hat, dude, I could bring you somewhere and have you sign autographs. We'd eat for free, but go ahead.
I'm a little taller than him. And more handsome, I should point
out. Way more.
Thank God.
But the camera adds 6 inches, so...
Now that's actually some funny shots.
We'll discuss where later. That was my Clint comment for the night.
Yeah. Okay. Well, we're late for the break, so I guess we're gonna have to go to the break.
Hogan's Heroes.
Oh,
You can get all of them on YouTube for free.
no kidding.
Yes, the entire series is there. I don't know how long it'll last before it gets yanked, but I know it's been on there for a while.
Okay. Almost
Absolutely.
Almost any Johnny Carson show.
Yeah, oh yeah, you can get a lot of Johnny out there.
Johnny
too,
Carson, the old Dean Martin shows.
The old Dean Martins were the best. Oh my God, Dean Martin shows were amazing. You want to see celebrities? Absolutely. The roasts were incredible.
And here are two immediate shows that I'm thinking of, and I know we're late for the break. We'll get to it in just a second. But you cannot do these shows today. You could not do Rowan and Martin's Laughing. Funny
Here
as
come the
hell.
judge.
And you could never, ever begin to do All in the Family.
Nope, All in the Family. The only way you could do All in the Family if everything was reversed.
Yeah. But even it kind of pushed the boundary then.
Oh, it most certainly did.
But
Clint and I, a couple years ago,
But it was
did a whole
so
segment on the brilliance of
well
that show
done.
and how Archie Bunker actually was a very, very sympathetic man.
He was a sympathetic
who
character.
put a lot of guards up to protect himself from being used. And if you watch that show through its entirety, you realize that as soon as he goes soft on certain people, he does get used. Look at Meathead and his daughter constantly.
Yep.
Hooked
like
and
Remoras,
he
too.
knows that about himself. So he puts up this strong exterior against people he knows that if he cares about them, he's opening himself up. The dichotomy of that show is pretty incredible. If you go back and rewatch it.
How sad is it to think, really, that shows that were produced in the late 60s and 1970s, in our enlightened age at 2018, you can't do them today.
SNL. I say SNL.
Holy crap. And in reflection, and before we go to the break, I only have one thing to say. Oh, watching.
Conservative media done right. You're listening to the SHR Media Network.
Hey, it's Sean from the Sack Heads Radio Show. Also one of the owners here at the SHR Media Network. Are you opinionated? Have you ever wanted to do
Jergeisty thing.
Sack Heads Against Tyranny.
You're listening to the SHR
still
Media
hate you guys for
Network.
Well, that's it. This is the final 25 minutes of the Sack Heads Against Tyranny show. It's Wednesday, the year of our Lord.
You gonna throw me $1 over here or what?
9/12/18. Except right now it's 38 minutes after midnight on the East Coast.
It is the 13th, isn't it?
So now it's the 13th.
So to those people on the East Coast, I want to wish my son James a happy birthday, even though
perfect.
It's not till after midnight here. But you know,
he's going to be 8, right?
Yes.
Big dude. Let's see. In chat over here, in SHR chat, Mike said, "Hey, BZ, ask Sean what are his memories of Saturday mornings."
Saturday morning cartoons.
And so, did you watch cartoons or shows? Because I'm going to go back to the 50s for this stuff.
I bet you I watched the same shit you did.
You could have.
Because I used to watch with my father.
Because
my father loved Saturday morning cartoons. We'd watch Bugs Bunny, all the Warner Brothers.
Yeah, the best cartoons are the Warner Brothers cartoons.
Yes.
Because they were appreciated on two angles.
There was the adult level.
Which is why good animation today, and you can get kids to appreciate it, and you can get adults to appreciate it because it caters to both. And Warner Brothers cartoons were just like that.
Amazing.
I used to watch Tom and Jerry.
Tom and Jerry's another good one.
Cartoons.
Hanna-Barbera had a couple good ones.
Hanna-Barbera had some good ones. Now here's something I bet you didn't watch. I bet you didn't watch Commander Cody.
Nope, did not.
And I bet you didn't watch Sky King.
Did not.
Let's see. Out of the land of the western skies comes Sky King.
I did watch. Did you guys have any of the like Willy Whistle, the local cartoons? Like the local TV shows with clowns.
Right.
And
we had
the Buster Brown suits.
I'll have you know that in the 60s, very, very early 60s, I was like 10 or 11. I think it was around 1960. I was on the Captain
I got
Delta
called
show.
Shawnee Daniels for dancing instead of Stormy.
Oh boy.
And I think it's Beantown Billy that did it in the YouTube chat. My own brethren.
How sad. Now, I gotta say this. Beantown Billy said, he made a comment in chat. He said, well, a cop pulled me over one day and said, you were texting and driving. And I said, no, I was watching the Beverly Hillbillies. And he let me off with a warning. Now, here's some other stuff that I used to watch, and I bet you have too, and most everybody else has. Three Stooges.
Of course.
Right?
Amazing.
Our Gang comedies, Little Rascals.
Yep, Little Rascals.
Still funny as hell today.
I'll tell you right now, to this very day, the Three Stooges hold water.
They are still as good today. The Rascals, Little Rascals, are still as funny. Mike says Hunter with Fred Dryer.
Yes, great show.
You know what, Mike? I used to enjoy the hell out of Fred Dryer as Hunter. Fred Dryer was a defensive end for the New York Giants.
Yes.
Big, tall guy, about 6'6", 6'7". As opposed to today, he would be way too thin. He was only probably 240, 250.
Yeah, small guy.
On a heavy day, he was maybe 250.
Yeah,
but I enjoy. And the chick that was his partner, Beverly, whatever the hell her name was, with the dark hair, as the brunette. Oh, I loved. I had a crush on her. Oh my God, I had a crush on her.
I also watched Starsky and Hutch.
Starsky and Hutch, the original, of course.
Barney Miller.
What? I asked you this before.
I love that show.
It was fabulous.
It was amazing.
And it was because there really wasn't much of Barney Miller. He would be in there, but it was all the rest of the ensemble cast. Jack Wu, just as that
he was amazing.
As that really taciturn Chinese guy whose humor you couldn't get
Japanese.
you couldn't get Wu is Chinese. Just thought I'd tell you that.
No. But in the show, he played a Japanese guy.
Oh, no. That's right. That's like Cam Fong as Chin Ho.
Yes. Yes.
For Hawaii 5-0.
Yep.
And Kono as Zulu.
Yes. Nobody knows why.
I couldn't tell you what I had for dinner tonight.
But
I
you
can
can remember that shit.
But I can still remember Cam Fong as Chin Ho and Kono as Zulu. Where the hell does this stuff come from?
That is absolutely amazing.
Wow.
But yeah, we did all the Saturday morning cartoons. I can remember when my old man was actually home and he wasn't working. We'd sit and I'd have cereal and coffee, and he'd have coffee, and we'd watch.
Do kids have cereal anymore?
Yes.
I have no idea. If
My son does every morning.
Kids, I don't know if they have cereal. Do they drink milk?
Yes. Well, my son drank he drank a gallon of milk the other day on me. I'm not kidding. Like, it was almost a whole gallon. I couldn't believe he did it. And every time I saw him, he was walking down the hallway with another cup.
Okay, here's another one. Does anybody remember Clutch Cargo?
No.
Clutch Cargo was this still animation. It was the weirdest ass thing, and it used to creep me out.
It's Afghanistan animation,
It used to be on CBS, and it was the still animation, but there was a cutout for the lips.
Kind of like Conan did for years.
And you would have the lips moving, but the background animation would be absolutely still. Or does anybody remember Space Ghost?
Yes, I remember Space Ghost.
With the two aliens, Gloop and Gleep?
Now, Space Ghost Coast to Coast was brought back on Cartoon Network, and they did a very adult version of the show where he... Watch it.
Space Ghost.
Watch it. So, Jennifer in the chat room, the Cheech and Chong movies, I absolutely remember. They were hysterical. Little House on the Prairie, classic. But then she brought up Emergency. Emergency was an amazing television show for me growing up.
And its two predecessors.
Yep.
The classic
Dragnet. Well, Dragnet.
Dragnet.
Yep.
And then I love the hell out of Adam 12.
Yep. One Adam 12 was amazing.
One Adam 12, see the man.
Yep.
And then Mike in chat brings up T.J. Hooker.
T.J. Hooker was good. Rampart. Emergency for me, the other two shows, so Adam 12 was before me, and you couldn't really get on-demand replay, so I didn't see a lot of it. Dragnet, if I was up at 11 o'clock at night when I wasn't supposed to be on the off channels, all the local TV 56.
Did you guys have anywhere around here now in Sacramento? We had Creature Features late night.
Yes,
we had Bud Wilkins.
Yep,
or Bob Wilkins.
TV 38 had our Creature Feature.
Bob Wilkins was this little thin geeky guy with big thick glasses and always smoking a cigar. And then he would come on with wry comments at the beginning of a Creature Feature, play a monster film, and he'd make various wry observations just in the commercial area, and they were terrible.
They were horrible. We had Dave Maynard.
We used to love to watch them.
Yes, and when I wasn't supposed to be up that late. Dave Maynard did our Creature double features. But we had an afternoon Creature double feature and a late night Creature double feature. Saturday afternoons, I think or Sunday afternoons, when there was nothing else on the off channels to show. Because you had your major networks, right? You had CBS, NBC, ABC, and then you had all your local ones. Ours was WSBK and a couple of the other ones. Combat, I remember watching Combat.
Oh, yeah, Rick Jason.
Yep.
And
watched that with my dad.
Oh God, not Kenneth Tobey. Kenneth Tobey was in Whirlybirds.
Yes.
Vic Morrow.
Vic Morrow.
The
amazing Vic Morrow.
And who had the BAR? Cage.
Well, and so
God, where does this crap live up here?
I want to go back to Emergency because for me, I was growing up the son of a police officer. So naturally, what job did I want to do for a few years? Was be a firefighter, right? Because that's just the most natural progression in the world.
Oh, your poor dad.
Actually, no, he was pushing me that way anyways. But Emergency was amazing for me. It was the first time I could remember like an adult show that I could follow along because the plots were pretty simple. But I was intrigued and blown away by Gage and DeSoto. Ray Mantooth, and I forget the other guy's name.
Oh yeah, Randy Mantooth.
Ray. I don't think it's Randy. I think it was Ray Mantooth.
$100. $100. You gonna take it? Randy Mantooth.
Go ahead.
You're gonna take it?
I'll Google it right now.
Okay.
I'll Google it right now.
Okay. I'll
Mantooth.
I'll continue
Emergency.
on. I'll continue on while you do that.
Oh, you're wrong. I was wrong, but we were both wrong.
Oh, none of us win.
Randolph Mantooth.
Well, that's Randy.
No.
Jesus.
No.
God,
no.
Hey, folks.
Nope.
Folks listening live. Folks listening.
No, fuck you.
In chat.
You
folks,
lose.
Folks on Facebook. Folks on Facebook, Periscope, and YouTube. Folks in the YouTube chat. Folks in the SHR chat.
Oh man, you're just trying to grease $100 out of me.
And folks listening in podcast. Am I not correct?
You're wrong.
Randolph Moontooth.
Mantooth.
Is the same as Randy.
No.
Randy, Randolph, Randy, Randolph. Oh my
Do you remember
God.
who his partner was?
No, that I do not.
Kevin Teague, who's been a bad guy in a bunch of things later in life. And he's one of those guys that when you see him, you're like, oh shit, that's that guy.
Oh, I can see his face. As a matter of fact,
yep.
You're right. He has played historic bad guys.
Yeah,
quite a number of times.
Amazingly well, actually. And a lot of just he just shows up in different places where you're like, holy shit, that's him again. And he does a really good job of it. And then he's also done a couple like outright comedies where he's done a really good job of it too.
Was he in any of the He might have been in Airplane. I don't think so.
No, he was not.
He was also in the Something Gun comedies.
The Naked Gun?
Naked Gun.
No.
Was he? He was in No Naked Guns?
No, he was in no Naked Guns. I don't think he was in any Naked Guns whatsoever. Whose character were you thinking he was in the original? Are you talking the series or the movies? Because the Naked Gun had a series too. People forget about it. It was about 12 episodes.
He wasn't a major character.
Because in I forget the name of the captain, Ed, in the series, but I know George Kennedy played him in the movies.
George Kennedy, oh my God.
Great actor.
What an incredible actor.
But he certainly wasn't Leslie Nielsen.
Thunderbolt and Lightfoot.
Yes.
Where Eagles Dare.
Yes.
Oh my God. A great, great character actor.
Everybody's going through. It's amazing what'll get the chat going, right? We're up to Creature Double Features, Land of the Lost, another great TV show, Bewitched, another great TV show.
Time Tunnel.
I remember Time Tunnel.
See?
God, there was so many great little shows.
What was the name of the character in Naked Gun? Not the actor, but the character.
Lieutenant Frank Drebin?
Frank
Police
Drebin.
Squad.
Bingo. That's it. And Leslie Nielsen was do you
Airplane?
remember when he took his shirt off? Leslie Nielsen was,
that was part 2.
In his 60s or 70s.
He takes his shirt off and he's ripped.
Yeah, and Leslie Nielsen was looking pretty good. Now, here's the movie that I primarily remember Leslie Nielsen. He was by the way, some of the best science fiction films came out in the 1950s. And Leslie Nielsen played the commander of the cruiser C-57D in Forbidden Planet. That was the introduction of the original Robbie the Robot.
Well, and here's what a lot of people don't know about Leslie Nielsen. He was a strict, serious actor until Airplane.
Oh, he was a very serious actor.
Never in a comedy before. He was in.
And don't you think that's probably why he was cast?
Well, yeah, because they never thought he would be able to cross over.
And did he not play it perfectly?
He was amazing.
He was perfect for that role.
When he played the Doctor in Airplane, he was the best dry humor that you could ever possibly have. I'll never, and I still to this day, and people don't even know where it's from, where you say, Shirley, you can't be serious. I am serious, and stop calling me Shirley. We have to get this man to a hospital. A hospital? What is it? It's a giant building with a lot of sick people in it, but that's not important right now. And he was so dry and amazing, and everybody in Airplane was. That whole cast, which is why I watched Airplane Part 2, even though I knew it was going to be Airplane Part 1 all over again. Totally worth your time. Totally worth it, because it's amazing. The Naked Gun series, Zucker, who created all that, those are the producers. Those guys were out of their mind brilliant when it came to horrific, dumb comedies. And just little things like, who was the pilot in Airplane? The head pilot, the lead pilot.
Oh, the guy with the guy with the dark hair, guy with the dark curly hair, who at one point was holding the yoke, and water was absolutely cascading down his face.
And
I can't remember him in.
That's Robert Hayes. He was the star, but who was the captain of the airplane before who got sick?
Oh, Robert Stack.
No, he was in it. Robert Stack is in it.
Okay.
But he wasn't the pilot. He was the pilot. He was with
I could have sworn
Lloyd Bridges in
Robert
the control
Stack.
room.
Oh, Lloyd Bridges. God,
Lloyd Bridges was brilliant in that movie. Oh, God.
Great in Airplane. They were great in Airplane.
Looks like I picked a bad week to stop sniffing glue. And it just gets progressively worse. Looks like I picked the wrong week to stop taking amphetamines. It's just horrible. But the lead pilot. And then the second pilot, you may not guess, because I think people forget this more.
I threw it out as Robert Stack.
But it was a major actor at the time, too. Another serious actor, Mission Impossible.
Oh, Peter, he was the brother.
No Randy Mantooth.
He was the brother to Jim Arness.
Yes.
Oh, trivia, Jim Arness. Jim Arness's
Peter Graves.
Who was in Peter Graves, who was later went on to Gunsmoke.
Yes.
Peter Graves was shorter. Peter Graves was like 6'2" or 6'3". James Arness was 6'5", or I think he was 6'6". And his very first role was in a science fiction film. The Thing. He played The Thing.
No kidding.
In the movie The Thing. And that one also had Kenneth Tobey in it. And then went on to be the Rob Bottin, the great special effects movie in 1980, the John Carpenter remake of The Thing, which actually, in my opinion, is the best thing, because all the gags, the effects in that were not CG.
No.
Those were all real effects.
And do you remember, like, the movies, oh, God, like The Blob?
Steve McQueen. That was Steve McQueen's first movie.
Yep, was The Blob. And then you got into, like, The Toxic Avenger. Do you remember The Toxic Avenger?
Yep.
Such a horrible, like, that bloody B movie. Swamp Thing was another one, too, that was just...
That was out of came from a Marvel comic.
Yes. And God, there was just so many great shows and movies.
Trivia. Oh, my gosh. Mike in chat says Simon and Simon.
Simon and Simon was another good one. Major Dad.
Jake and the Fat Man.
Jake and the Fat Man was really good.
Buddy Ebsen also had that detective series.
Oh,
and
it wasn't McMillan and Son.
No,
it was,
Buddy Ebsen was originally in the Beverly Hillbillies.
Yes, and I can remember the intro and Buddy Ebsen as... another show I'd watch with my old man.
Does anybody remember Mannix?
Yes, I do remember Mannix.
Okay. Mannix was the first show to feature a black female as a continuing character.
Mm-hmm.
Even before... actually, Star Trek was. Mannix would be the second.
Uhura, right.
Yeah. Okay,
I got to Google the show with Buddy Ebsen because he was the detective. He was the cop. Or right?
Do you remember? Yes, he was. He was a private detective.
Yes.
Anybody remember the first interracial kiss on television? Ever. Was on Star Trek.
Uhura
and Captain Kirk.
Yes.
In I think the episode was Bread and Circuses.
Barnaby Jones.
Barnaby Jones, bingo, bango, bongo, Batman.
Wow, that is absolutely incredible.
And the first curse word ever on television, on major television in the 60s. William Shatner, let's get the hell out of here.
Really?
Yes.
Did not know that. It was on the list of 7 things. 7 things you can't say on television. But George Carlin. 7 words you can't say on television. And you know what? As
dirty as my mouth will be, I won't go do that. But Google it and listen to it. That was done back in the early 80s, and he was brilliant.
George Carlin was truly a comic genius.
And then you get into, even the campy shows like the Brady Bunch.
Never went for that. Didn't do anything
That was around
for me.
forever.
The original Lost in Space was pretty
Lost
good.
in Space.
Okay, there you go. That's another show that just came back, Lost in Space.
Yep.
It's a remake, and it just came out earlier this year. That's another that I would recommend to anybody that wants to get into some science fiction stuff. That was on Netflix.
Yes,
If
I believe it was.
Lost in Space.
I actually, what's funny is, they
They did the movie probably about 10 or 12 years ago with, what's his face there? Matthew, he was on Friends. He's from Boston. I can't remember his last name. And I actually thought they did a pretty good job with it.
Matt Perry?
No, the other one. He played the goofy kid, the actor.
You don't mean the tall guy that was on Band of Brothers?
No. LeBlanc, Matt LeBlanc.
Oh, okay, all right.
Yep, Matt LeBlanc.
Oh, he was on the HBO series.
Yeah, he was also. There was another show that was around. It was a comedy, and that I thought was kind of funny, but apparently it didn't last, unfortunately. And then, what was one of the other shows that we used to watch all the time?
Are you talking about the 80s, the 90s?
Airwolf was a great one. Knight Rider.
Oh, Airwolf. Oh, God, that Jan's.
Oh yeah. Come on, $100.
God, I can see his craggy face.
Huge drinking problem, almost killed him.
He went into drugs and alcohol. Yep. Oh my God! And Ernest Borgnine.
Ernest Borgnine, who was an amazing
also
actor.
an Airwolf.
And Quentin McHale, by the way. McHale's Navy.
Oh.
Jan Michael Vincent.
Okay.
And Jennifer in the chat room said that her father actually worked on Silver Spoons. I remember Silver Spoons, little Ricky Schroeder.
Oh my God, was that him? Okay.
Yep, little Ricky Schroeder was on Silver Spoons, and that was back in the day.
Moving on up.
And then, the Jeffersons was amazing. The Jeffersons was again. The Jeffersons is a show you couldn't make today.
Oh my God!
Because
what an incredibly wickedly ridiculous comment is this on our liberated society when we finally realize. You know how liberated we are? We're as liberated as the 1700 Puritans.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
And this is 2018.
Do you remember George Jefferson? Maybe I'm wrong, but they would call people whitey and all this other stuff.
Oh, yeah.
And it was funny as hell. Saturday Night Live was the same thing. They would say the most hellacious racial things in the world that were hysterical because at the time, comedy was meant to get people to laugh and embrace your stereotype a little bit, enjoy it, realize that it's not the end of the world because somebody said a boo-boo face. I go back to Blazing Saddles, how you could never make that movie today. The Jeffersons
definitely
had racial overtones to it.
Let's say you remade that movie today, Blazing Saddles.
Oh, God, I wish.
Okay.
You have no idea how many times Clint and I have talked this up, so go ahead.
If you did, the sad thing is, would you even find an audience for it?
Nope.
Would people even go to it?
I have young folks that work for me now that I've said, go watch Blazing Saddles. Half of them come back and they're like, oh my God, that was absolutely amazing. And the other ones are like, how did they make that?
You can't watch that.
You can't. I can't believe people would say that. And I'll be like, what are you talking about? The movie was insanely brilliant. Mel Brooks at his absolute finest. And then you had Cleveland Little,
Cleveland Little was brilliant. He was brilliant.
Who's an amazing actor outside of that too. Another movie or another actor who was a serious actor prior to that, did a lot of stage, did a lot of other things, and then he did that, and you realized how freaking funny he was. And he showed up in a couple Fletch movies and a couple other things later. Gene Wilder, who is absolutely brilliant.
He married Gilda Radner,
yes,
if you remember that. And
absolutely.
then Gilda Radner passed away from cancer.
And Gene Wilder just passed away.
Very sad. Yes, as a matter of fact, you're right. I think Gene Wilder passed away earlier this year.
Yeah, a couple of months ago. Very, very short time. You had, what was his name? Dr. Strangelove, where he's riding the missile. Not Doctor Strangelove. Yeah, Doctor Strangelove.
Yeah, no, that's right. He was the B-52 pilot.
Yes, and it's his name's on the tip of my tongue.
I can see his face. I can see him riding the missile, holding his cowboy hat, going, yeah.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. God. He was great in that, too. And Slim Pickens.
That's it.
Slim Pickens. Yep. He was absolutely, thank you, Beantown Billy in the chat room.
He was also in the Steve McQueen movie with Ali McGraw.
Yes.
The Getaway.
Yes, The Getaway was a great movie.
The original The Getaway was fabulous.
It was.
Violent as hell and a great movie. When he goes into the store, buys a shotgun, some rounds, comes out and shoots the shit out of the old Plymouth cop car. The hood flies up and the car catches fire.
You know, it was actually another great original, too.
Al Lettieri was in that as the big mafia dude, the big old mafia dude. And also from All in the Family, who was his girlfriend, Sally.
Sally, God, Struthers.
Yep.
And you know what else was, oh, God, it's funny. You're just talking about the original versus the remake. So the remake of Ocean's 11 was amazing. They did a great job. The cast was incredible.
The very first one, you mean?
And even the second one. The first two remakes were really enjoyable.
Yeah, I would go with that.
You go back to the original Ocean's 11 when you had the Rat Pack. And it was made in, what, 58, 60, around there?
Yeah, it was probably made for, like...
$20,000.
$20,000.
And watch that. And what a great movie that was. But that brings me to Sammy Davis Jr., and we just lost a great actor this week, Mr. Burt Reynolds.
Oh. Okay, stop right there. Okay. Favorite Burt Reynolds movie?
My favorite's going to be Smokey and the Bandit, hands down.
Okay.
Second favorite? And so Sharky's Machine.
Sharky's Machine. That's my numero uno.
Yeah.
Sharky's Machine. No one has heard of Sharky's Machine.
Outstanding movie.
Why was Sharky's Machine so damn good?
The Flying Nun. That was another good one.
It was because of Burt Reynolds himself.
Yep.
And that was the first time that you ever saw him without his toupee.
Yep.
Was in that movie. And the other thing that made it great was the villain.
Mm-hmm. Oh,
Henry Silva.
Was it?
Henry Silva.
Wow, good for you. I wouldn't have pulled that out.
Henry Silva is the quintessential movie villain.
Gidget was another great movie in the 60s, TV show in the 60s.
The first Steven Seagal movie.
Hold on, I want to finish Burt Reynolds up, too.
Okay, all right.
Because I brought up Sammy the Davis.
We're in overtime.
I know, we're in overtime. You're in Sack Heads overtime.
That's right.
So Longest Yard was an incredible movie as well.
Enjoyed that.
Very much. But Cannonball Run... You have to understand, Cannonball Run was a movie that I think after Smokey and the Bandit, Burt Reynolds said, hey, you know what? We can get a whole bunch of famous actors to come down and goof on each other and have fun and get paid for this. If you watch Cannonball Run and you watch the outtakes from Cannonball Run 1 and 2, the same thing with Smokey and the Bandit, but the amount of famous people that showed up in Cannonball Run and the outtakes that you could just tell all they wanted to do was laugh together, and they found out a way to film a movie around it and get paid for it. And Cannonball Run, Dom DeLuise,
well, that was
out of his mind.
That was also when Burt Reynolds was running around with, because he used to do his own stunts, so he was running around with all those stunt guys whom he loved to have in his films.
Yes.
And I think one of them ended up being a director, but he and this guy... Hal Needham.
Okay.
Hal Needham was a stunt guy. And he ended up being a director, but you could tell, there are movies.
They loved it.
There are movies that you go to that at the end of the movie, you think to yourself, everyone involved in that film had the time of their lives. They had a great, great fun, and it shows on the screen. You could see it on the screen.
Well, and one of my favorite parts of Cannonball Run was Sammy Davis Jr. and Dean Martin showing up dressed as the priests. And and Sammy Davis Jr., who's a black Jewish dude, and Dean Martin's drinking the entire time, and that wasn't part of the role. I think he just didn't want to put his glass down because he was a notorious lush. And I just thought to myself, how great would it have been just to be on that set and watch those guys just go to town having a blast. And there was that whole like campy chase scenes and all that fun stuff that went along with it. It was very much in the essence of Smokey and the Bandit, but definitely much more. You know, you had Captain Chaos, which was Dom DeLuise's superhero.
Captain Chaos.
It was just amazing. The doctor, I can't remember the doctor, but he's got the crossed eye, and he was all messed up in the back of the ambulance that they would drive. It was just brilliant show.
The guy with the weird eye was Jack Elam. Was he in it?
Yes.
Oh, I didn't realize
he played
Jack
the
Elam was
doctor in
it.
the back.
Okay.
And
because Jack Elam would look at you this way, and the other eye was like staring off into space somewhere.
Yeah, it was just it wasn't Marty Feldman. A lot of people get those two guys confused.
No, Jack
talking,
Elam was in a lot of westerns.
Yes, he absolutely was. He may have no, he wasn't in Blazing Saddles, but he was around quite a bit. And I love the fact too in those movies is, you know, and the same thing with Smokey and the Bandit, that whole '80s, late '70s, early '80s thing. The whole movie was Burt Reynolds trying to get a girl into the back of the ambulance to get laid.
Yeah.
Like, it was just a riot to see that happen, and everyone was like, this is perfectly fine. Whereas now it's like, oh, God, how dare you?
And the other one was about a trailer full of beer.
Yes. Yeah. Illegally crossing state lines.
I remember, this is going to seem so weird to people that are listening or kids now, but for a time, I lived in Ohio. I lived on base, Wright-Patterson Air Force Base. And while I was there, in Ohio, we had near beer, and we also, you could not, for whatever convoluted reason, I do not know why, you could not get, or they would not ship Coors beer east of the Rocky Mountains. You could get it on the West Coast.
It was like labeling or something like that.
You could not get it on the East Coast, and I can clearly recall while going to Wright State University, cracking open a Coors Light, and we giggled like bastard school children thinking that we'd pulled the wool over on somebody because one of our guys somehow had acquired a six-pack of Coors beer. And it was like, oh, this is the best beer we've ever had.
Well, and
life is so weird.
Yeah, it's just funny. Dude, that was a great walk down memory lane, man.
God dang. And did we do politics?
Not one bit.
No, we did 9/11.
We did a little history on 9/11. We did a little emotion.
That was it. And the rest of it was
TV shows,
just
pop culture,
stream of consciousness.
Yeah,
kind of stuff.
I'm so glad Randy Mantooth could join us this evening.
Yeah,
it's Randolph.
No, it's Randy.
Oh, God damn it. Hey, dude, thanks for having me. This has been awesome. I love to come and sit in whenever I can. It is
great.
Enjoyable, and I look forward to when I can do it again.
Yeah.
By the way, those in the way of Hurricane Florence, please heed all the warnings. Be safe to the first responders who are risking it all to make sure that other people are taken care of. God bless you and Godspeed.
Yep.
Get out of the way. Do what's right. Do the right thing, please.
Got Carrie Baxter Donovan on tomorrow night, and she is directly in the way in North Carolina. Going to talk to her about that and a lot of politics. Folks, thanks for listening. God bless. You take care. Be safe. Next week, Sack Heads Against Tyranny. Same bat time, same bat channel. 11 p.m. Eastern, 8 p.m. Pacific. On SHR Media YouTube channel. Subscribe to the SHR Media YouTube channel. Like us on Twitter.
Share it.
And like us on Facebook. Follow us. Thanks. God bless everybody. See you next week.
Good night.